Hi, my name is Christopher Malcolm, and welcome to Movable Canvas, where we talk about cinema, art, culture, and where those three things sometimes intersect. And today, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take it anymore. Okay, not really. But we are gonna discuss Sidney Lumet's 1976 comedic satire masterpiece, Network. Written by the legendary Paddy Chayefsky, who won an Academy Award for this script, as well as scripts for Marty and The Hospital. Network is a cautionary tale about what happens when we let our entertainment interest commingle with our news interest. Ah, the good old days. If only Chayefsky were alive today to just see how low things really could go. But Network takes place in a news environment that many watching this video might be too young to remember, where the nightly national news broadcasts were all that mattered, where there were really only a handful of channels, so virtually all of America got our news from the same source. Can you imagine that? There was no cable news, there was no algorithms designed to only allow us customized facts that we already agree with. There was just straight journalists, or the idea of straight journalism, fighting the good fight to get the news out to the people with the minimum amount of editorial input. In 1976, Chayefsky started seeing entertainment features starting to creep into those broadcasts. He was seeing the conglomerates that own the media companies starting to try and inject their own interest into news coverage. And he saw masses of Americans no longer reading books or looking into topics for themselves. Instead, they're just turning to the most digestible content that requires the least amount of effort. Sound familiar? I was rewatching Network recently. They actually had a screening of it on St. Patrick's Day. Get it? Paddy Chayefsky, St. Patty's Day. Yeah. And I couldn't help but to wonder what Chayefsky would make of a social media world, where the major news networks are but really a shadow of their old selves, where corporate interests no longer even try to hide the fact that they're trying to influence the news channels, where even local broadcasters aren't immune to the interests of their corporate overlords, a world where late-night comedians have somehow become our most trustworthy news source, and YouTube clips from sometimes questionable sources have supplanted the need for communities to share in the communal experience of watching the nightly news together at a prescribed time every night. I didn't mean to go off on a tangent there, but I do think it's important for us to understand what Howard Beale was so mad about before he launched into his legendary monologue. Actually, what I was most struck about rewatching it this time around was that Beale's monologue is hardly the only one in the film. As a matter of fact, as I was trying to dissect what makes Chayefsky's screenplay so special, what I realized is that the film is more or less a series of monologues, both wistful of the past and concerned about the future. Of course, Howard Beale's on-air rant takes the cake. Beale has been an on-air anchor since the days of the Korean War, and by the 1970s he is viewed as a relic of the past. About to be put out to pasture, he has a mental breakdown on air and proclaims that he's going to kill himself live on national TV. At first, this is a minor hiccup for the standards and practices, but once the company bigwigs realize that the less Howard is in control of his own sanity, the more ratings increase, they decide not only to keep Howard on air, but to milk his insanity for all it's worth. Viewers aren't tuning in for the facts, they're viewing in for the spectacle. Again, sound familiar? This leads to a series of on-air outbursts, with the mad as hell speech being really in the center of all of them. But that speech isn't the only monologue worth noting. Cutthroat media executive Diana Christensen, played by Faye Dunaway, is obsessed with ratings. Like, really, really obsessed with ratings, to the point that she actually gets aroused. Literally. Of course, one of the funniest scenes in the movie is where Faye Dunaway goes on a date with Max Schumacher, who's played by William Holden. He's kind of like a veteran news anchor. They do all the romantic things, they have dinner, they walk on the beach, they make love. But through it all, Dunaway maintained an ongoing monologue about her efforts to fix her primetime programming, with little to no regard for Max actually even being there in the first place. When they finally do go to bed together, her climax is brought on not really by anything that Max is doing, but just by the thought that her ratings are going to go up on one of her pet shows. It's one of the biggest laughs in the movie, and that laugh is immediately followed by the movie's most dramatic scene. There's a smash cut from Dunaway having an orgasm straight to Max's wife Louise, played by Beatrice Straight, hearing the news that Max has fallen in love with a younger woman, Faye Dunaway, and intends to leave his family. The scene is absolutely devastating, mostly due to Straight's amazing performance. She actually holds the record for winning the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress with the least amount of screen time. Her performance mostly consists of really that scene, but she is so good in it that you'll never forget her. That performance is fueled by a selection of words that only Paddy Chayefsky could provide. In fact, it is Chayefsky's faculty with words that is really integral to being able to pull off such an unconventional narrative structure. As a screener, I'm always looking for ways to cut down on my monologues. Not because I don't think they're any good, but because it's incredibly difficult to hold an audience's attention for too long in a conversation if it's only going one way. Your monologue has to be really worth it to keep them from stirring in their seats. Yet in Network, again and again, Chayefsky pulls off this feat. Later in the film, when Bill Holden realizes that he and Dunaway's affair might be coming to an end, he gets another great monologue. One about Dunaway's inability to feel real human emotion, about her only being able to get turned on by what's on TV, and her inability to interact with real human things in real life, or IRL, I guess, in today's parlance. A sentiment that is in conversation with the main theme of the film. In Holden's late monologue, he utters what might be one of the funniest lines I've ever heard in cinema, where Faye Dunaway is breaking up with him, and she makes a crack about his lovemaking. He says, "Why is it that every woman thinks the worst thing she can say to a man is to impugn his cocksmanship?" Only Paddy Chayefsky thinks to put those words together in that combination. But by seeking to elevate and stylize his diction in such a way, he is able to take what could have been a droll monologue and turn it into an exercise in wordsmanship. It's this kind of skill that runs throughout the film and keeps the film afloat. Howard Beale isn't the only one with an axe to grind. Paddy Chayefsky had something to say, and he did so by writing one of the most hilarious and literate scripts ever put on film. Thanks again for watching another episode of Movable Canvas. If you like this kind of material, make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. I try to post a video each week where we talk about some of the greatest films Hollywood or the rest of the world have to offer. And please do leave me a comment. Have you ever seen Network? What do you think would even be the modern day equivalent of a film like Network? What would be the modern day equivalent of Howard Beale? One of the late night comedians? Some news broadcast anchor, perhaps? Which one is your favorite monologue? I haven't even touched on Ned Beatty's threatening corporate CEO or Marianne Whitfield's revolutionary call for back-end distribution recruitment. Let me know what stretch of dialogue you enjoyed the most. I'd love to hear about it in the comments, and until next time, thanks for watching and have a great day.